Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. That's Duncan Thorin Shields. You know him, you love him. We've got Sam pressing the buttons. He's next door. His bong arrived off Amazon, and then he immediately opened the package and it broke. So Sam's very sad. Rest in peace, Sam.
Do you want to know something hilarious, by the way? Is
What's
that because obviously the word bong still isn't that big a thing in the UK, except when describing what Big Ben does, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, like in general, I mean, it's weird because obviously there's lots of people in the UK smoke cannabis, but we actually thought it's not really such an overt thing. People don't talk about it that much, you know, except with their friends. So as a result, because the word bong isn't actually like part of the vernacular in the UK, years and years ago, this must be like 20 years ago now, I'd actually had a thing where one time I'd been really drunk and I'd used a bong, and then it was like when someone passed me it and I was lighting it, because I was so drunk, like the flame was like burning my finger as I lit it, right? And so I had one of those really bad reactions though, where it doesn't just get burned, right? Like, you know, the next day it looks like you've got like, what the fuck, why is it like 4 times the size? So I went to the doctor, right? And obviously you've been told to tell the doctor, just tell him the truth. You know?
Always tell him
and
the
obviously
truth.
you're thinking in that scenario, you know, it's not like he's going to go weed and then just call in the SWAT team, is he? He's just going to go, okay, fair enough. So he goes, how did you burn it? And I go, I got the angle wrong when I was trying to light this bong. And he goes, a bomb. And I was just going, no. Like, that's when the fucking SWAT team might come in. Just rushing through.
Accidentally confessing to acts of terrorism. Yeah, not bad. For me, growing up, the word bong, it used to mean, I don't know if you had this as well, because obviously you were from a similar part of the world. But if you had, it was to describe something that was kind of, you know, not right.
Like eyes.
Oh yeah.
We used to have a teacher at my school, and unfortunately, he was the woodwork teacher, right? And he had a massive bong eye. We used to call him Bong Eye Richardson, right? And he was in charge of the bandsaws and stuff. And one of the things he used to do
That's like you just
and like, you know. You always used to think you could get away with talking in class because you were fucking looking like at 10 to 2, you know, so you never knew which eye was like on you. So he'd always get you somehow. It was always the right eye at the right time. But anyway, he used to do this thing because obviously when you're around shop equipment, you can't have a tie on, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because if it gets caught, you know, and anyone like walked up to the bandsaw with a tie, grabbed their tie going, and this is why you don't wear ties, and he'd push their face like towards the fucking band.
That seems unreasonable.
And I'm like, mate, your fucking eyes are fucked. Like, how's your depth perception? It was an accident waiting to happen, it was.
I actually had something similar with that happen once. So someone who had that problem with their eye, or one of them, like, they don't have 100% vision or it's a little bit off, you know. And here's all I'm going to say is, like, because I assumed they were still decent in the other eye, they actually were allowed to drive. And so they were driving me in a car, and I was in the passenger side. We're in a Continental car here, so they're on the left, I'm on the right. And they're driving, and I'm not joking. At one point, I see there's like a bollard coming up that's clearly on my side of the car. And so I don't want to say something, do I? Like, you don't want to start doing that, do you? Just going, can you see everything? You're right. So I'm just going, I'm sure he sees it. I'm sure he sees it. And then at the last minute, he just swerves like, and I was like, you didn't see that the whole time. This real life. What am I doing? So literally, Richard, politeness almost cost my motherfucking life. And through that window.
No, it explains a lot, actually. Yeah, when politeness can get you killed.
I took a vow after that to never be tactful again, and I'm still alive, so it's worked.
And the rest is history. Well, look, it's going to be good, actually, because you're not going to have a lot of cause to be tactful, because we're going to talk about the European minor. Again, we'll skirt over the obvious joke, please. Yeah, we'll get past that, and we'll get into what happened there. Obviously, lots of storylines came out of it. I do want to start by talking about EnVyUs, who I thought were super unlucky. It was very disappointing for them. They've had a bit of a rough time lately. They've been very good, but not quite good enough to sort of get what I think they've deserved, maybe, as that, you know, ephemeral, esoteric concept is, out of the last 2 tournaments. And they finished 3rd place after losing to Optic, the Danish team, in what was a great series. A good 2-1 series, lots of high-level performances. I just wanted to sort of pick your brains about this, because, first of all, I was really hoping EnVyUs were going to get there, honestly. I kind of felt out of the teams that were there, the one that would have perhaps excited me more going to the major would have been EnVyUs. It didn't happen. Do we feel this is like a watershed moment, or is it too early in sort of the team's life cycle to worry that they didn't get to a major?
I mean, I actually think in a mad way, I kind of know what Alu meant, where he did an interview when this minor was just starting. I think it was with HLTV.org, where he said something like that, like Cologne meant like teams would look at them differently at this event. And I think he is right in that sense. Like, if anything, the Cologne event might have actually, in a weird way, fucked them over. Like, it hasn't, in as much as it might get them invites to tournaments. But I mean, like, actually, if they'd have come in as a complete nobody that no one expected any from, so no one had seen their form at Cologne, I think actually a lot of the other teams might have overlooked them, and they might have actually had a little bit more of kind of like surprise factor to potentially get out here. But anyway, the big problem I've seen with their team is, like, first of all, their map pool looks a little bit limited. Like, they don't seem as though they have like more than like one or two really strong. That's fair enough, by the way. They're pretty strong on Dust too, which does seem to have been a massive factor in them actually being able to match up with all these teams of way better players. Then also, I do feel like actually they lack a little bit of firepower. Like, I think if you look, first of all, the results suggest it. Like, most games are super close that they're actually in. They're not really blowing any teams away. Then you got to look at the fact that, like, obviously they relied massively on Sergey at that last tournament. He actually had some games that looked like he was a bit off in this one. I actually saw that some people were telling me that aerial guy's supposed to be really good. He just hadn't shown it yet online. He did have some games in this tournament that looked good, but he was dreadful in Cologne. Like, that was the thing. In Cologne, despite the team doing well, I thought some of the members actually looked like they didn't necessarily hadn't adapted online, etc. So I do think it's still early days, like the second tournament realistically that we're paying attention to them. Definitely you can have an up and a down, but here's the thing, since they took so many teams close, I certainly think it's like another kind of, not like a notch in their belt because they didn't really win, but it certainly shows that they've got something there. Like, I do think it's solid that they can contend with these teams, but I'm certainly not expecting them to be anything nuts. Like, I think that the Cologne result probably was about right. Like, they won some close series, did well, fair play there. Then they came here, didn't break their way this time. Seems like it all evened out, I think.
Yeah, and of course, with them not qualifying, it brings up that age-old question. I know you've tweeted a lot about this lately. It's kind of very much on my mind as well going into this major. The way the slots are distributed globally, and, you know, you see a situation like this where there's a strong argument for the top three teams at the European minor to be going to the major, and certainly would add something to the major, add a depth of competition that perhaps some of the other teams that have qualified for don't. And I'm conflicted on it, Duncan. I think I like the idea of the majors being global, and I like the idea of like us having as much sort of geographical diversity as possible in terms of how that's going to impact on viewing audience, storylines, seeing new players for the first time, encouraging people to pick up CSGO in their respective countries because they've got a team they can get behind, and the hype will drive people to play the game. But equally as well, if you're making the argument from just a viewpoint of the best teams should be at the major regardless of anything else, anything extraneous to that, then certainly I feel the last couple of majors have kind of gone a bit awry from that ideal. So I wanted to pick your brains about this and whether or not Valve could maybe sit down and sort of, rejig the system.
Yeah, this is one that I find tough myself because I feel like it's one of those ones where you have to, first of all, define what you want the major to be. As you were saying there, is it a global celebration of Counter-Strike that is the World Cup of Counter-Strike and is supposed to allow everyone to be represented? And then after that initial caveat, you play out a real tournament and hopefully whoever wins is the best, and then you crown them world champion. I don't necessarily know that is what the major is. Like, one of the things I really liked about the major, and in fact, tournaments like also Valve does the International, obviously in Dota, is that they're actually not necessarily about equal distribution of slots and representing everyone. They allow the major regions to all qualify. So in theory, any team from those regions can go. But first of all, the International often worked on invites in the past. Now it works on circuit points. So these are not the hallmarks of a totally open global thing like a World Cup. I also think, like, I know you didn't bring it up, but this is what I often hear compared is the World Cup, because people always use that, right? I don't know why that is always used as the analogy point, because first of all, the World Cup is not the World Championship of Soccer. Like, I hope everyone's aware of that. it's a national world championship of soccer. And if you can't see the difference there, I think you're going to miss the whole point I'm about to make. Like, the World Cup is where you make a national team, and because you're making a fucking national team anyway, it's not about who the best players are and who the best team is. You just represent your nation, and therefore, yes, implicit, all the nations must have a chance to qualify, and in theory, you don't want it to be like 14 out of 16 teams are European, and then, sorry, no one from Africa gets to play because they lost at some minor that, the top European, the 10th best European team beat them at. Like, the World Cup implicitly is that. The first problem is, like, major isn't implicitly that. In fact, we don't really know yet what Valve intends for it. So the question is, are you going for that? Are you going for the best teams in the world? Then there's the other angle that the World Cup is every 4 years. So if anything, it also places more of an emphasis on countries have to be represented. So we have 2 majors a year. Like, it's really not the case that this is like, they'll just be in the dark and no one will see who they are if they're from a small region. So I actually find the football one a very weird one, especially because people are saying it within football. Well, what's the actual equivalent? I know there is no like World Club tournament because it just
no, but I mean, you would say the European.
You'd say the Champions League.
Yeah, sorry, I was.
Well, the Champions League explicitly does divide up slots for which league gets them based on the strength of those leagues. That's why when a league gets better, it gets more slots. We all know this is how it works. They even do it. I've always thought it was a cool aspect where if you win. Do they still do that? Where if you win, your league gets an extra slot?
Yeah. So it's
exactly.
Like that's why we've had 4 Champions League slots, and also I think it works out. Didn't they now make it so if you win the UEFA Cup, that there's an additional slot as well or something? I don't know. They keep tinkering it. Like the downside to that though, with the Champions League system, and this is one of the ways that people say it's devalued to the old European Cup, which I used to love watching when I was a kid. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really watch the Champions League as much. I mean, it's harder now that I live in America anyway because of time zones and stuff. But, it's very often you'll see the Champions League winner maybe was the second or third, in their respective leagues. Yes. That certainly happened in recent memory. And, you get teams who go to the Champions League that don't really have any chance of winning it and are there predicated on the overall perceived strength of their domestic league, which some people have some issues with that because, again, back when it was the European Cup, it would have been more appropriately called the Champions League because only the champions from each league played in it, and even some countries didn't get to put their champions in. If your European country was deemed to be a bit shit, it didn't matter whether you won the league or not. You weren't playing in the European Cup. And back in the sort of late 80s and early 90s, you had some absolute fucking banging tournaments where it was just literally the best teams in Europe, all champions in their respective divisions, coming together to play. Sure. And as more money came into the game, and then wanting to sort of stretch out the tournament, get more games, get more TV revenue, get more sponsors, it did kind of dilute what the European Cup was about. Now, you either think that's a bad thing if you're like a football purist, or you think it's a good thing because of all the things we're saying about the major in CSGO. More teams involved, more revenue, more sticker money. Cooler storylines because people get a chance to go to the major, like Windstrike, for example, by automatically qualifying again for the major, they would never have come through a qualification system now. If they had to re-qualify, they wouldn't be there. So it's always a tough one for me. I don't know what the answer is, but I definitely think you're right. It has to start with a clarity of vision for what we want the majors to be. And this is, again, where it gets back to the old, I think what Valve have done with the International, the way they've changed the system for which teams go there recently, and just overall what the International very clearly is, which is these are the best teams in the world competing for the biggest prize pool. Like, only legendary teams will win the International. It's once a year. I've said it for a while. We need something like that in Counter-Strike. If anything, the Dota system is a perfect pick up and drop into CSGO. Yeah. I mean, it would just work so well. And it's very bizarre to me that a company that is known for trying out things in different games to see if it'll work across all of their titles is so resistant to the idea. We've seen interviews. If you go on PC Gamer and Google it, you can find an interview where Valve have said, we don't want to copy what Dota 2 do in the CSGO.
Which, by the way, totally carries. Because if you think about it, It's obviously the same with the crowdfunding aspect, like the same sort of shit. Like I always make this joke now to people that because I've heard similar things. If you see something cool in Dota, just don't ever get your hopes up that'll be in CS, because in fact the fact it's in Dota means explicitly it probably won't be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's like I say, if you just think about how it works, you've got minors in Dota, and then you've got and again, it was a bit fucked up because you were getting teams that were just way too good to be in a minor competing in a minor, and they've resolved that issue, it seems. Yes. And then you had the majors, which are just majors, and then all of these things have a circuit, a qualification point circuit that enables you to be one of the teams that go to the international, they're moving away from like wild card invitations and all that stuff in the other tournaments. This is how it should be. And I feel this international that's coming up is going to be perhaps the best sort of esports tournament format that Valve have ever been involved in.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though, Rich. This is the part that, again, I think triggers me. So I want to ask you about this actually. Like if I isolate the major to only these teams, which basically, like, here's the best way to describe why the discussion happens. Because every time there are teams that we know are really good from Europe and on LAN are really good, who don't make it out of the minor or don't make the major, we think to ourselves, well, they would probably beat, the second team from the CIS minor, and they'd probably beat maybe one of the teams in the past from the Asian minor. Admittedly, they probably wouldn't now. And so what you think to yourself is, I'd rather see that team at the tournament for the sake of seeing a better tournament. So what people argue instead is the other side. Well, no, here's why I want the team who, even they might admit, isn't as good to be there. And usually that's going to be a team that comes from a lesser region, just never gets to big tournaments. And so people will do this thing. Funnily enough, I'm going to tie this to actually like the mentality of people who are social justice warriors, because there's actually a very positive sort of impulse in people who are social justice warriors, which is that what they're doing is being incredibly empathetic towards people who are downtrodden in life, who are having a really hard time. They're at the bottom of the social hierarchy. They don't have money. Maybe they're in like a position where it's hard to get good education. Like they're just basically, they're at the bottom of the food chain, and it's going to be real tough for them to like pull themselves up at that point in time. And what happens there, and I always think this is the flaw, is if you just talked about that and tried to find reasonable solutions for that, I'd be on board with you. I'd be saying, yeah, let's do it. Let's help these people. But if what you basically do when we boil your argument down is say, I am so empathetic to these people at the bottom that they are the only people I am going to consider. Everyone else, to some lesser degree, is making them be there. So fuck everyone else. And in fact, if I can find something that helps the lesser people, but also actively hurts the other people, the group of people who aren't in the worst position, I'll also do that. And that's what I feel like people are doing with this discussion. Because it's one thing if you say, right, well, a team comes along from a lesser region, they get sticker money, they get exposure, right? That's good for them. I can agree with that. But why is that good for me, someone who wants to see the best teams play and want to see a great tournament? Like, I'm not watching this tournament as like here's the thing, Richard. I'm not watching Britain's Got Talent, the first stages where the guy comes along and, he's had such a hard life. He was a drug addict. His mum left him. And you know what? He's never going to go to the finals, Rich. He's never going to win Britain's Got Talent. But you know what? If he could get through this one stage, it means so much to him. I'm not watching that, Rich. This is the fucking World Championship. I'm not watching some shitty story like that about a guy's. I get it. That sucks for that guy. So what is the most important factor of the majors? My question. If to other people the most important factor is the shittest teams in the world can qualify and maybe get a bit of money and some exposure, fair play. At least admit it at the outset. I'll admit the opposite. I hate shit teams and I hate shit regions, and I actually don't believe there has been any correlation to show that those teams getting sticker money or exposure helps them. So here's the best example ever. You brought it up. Winstrike were a top 8 team at the major, right? Which big lands have you seen them at? Which big wins have you seen them take down? What good player did they get into their team? What have they accomplished since the major? Has anyone even seen them play a game since the major?
Yeah. These questions all are very obvious.
They've got to be the best answer. They've got to be the best argument against you letting the shit teams qualify.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, so let's pick up on something you talked about there. People do have a tendency to get very enamored with the prospect of the underdog. And it sort of starts to override common sense and what tournaments should be about. I think you see this, it's unbelievably prevalent in esports as a whole, right? And I'll give you an example. I'm loath to talk about it because every time I talk about it, people come threaten to dox me and shoot me. But I'll bring up I'll bring up the FGC again.
Okay, right. Okay.
And their entire structure across the board rejects the idea of almost like the invitational structures.
Right.
They believe that every tournament should be open for everybody else who plays games. And the pro players, and I've talked to a lot of them, having done 3 or 4 events at E-League and going way back to I know some pros from way back in the day when I used to put on events in the UK when I was working at a LAN center. And they hate it. There's nothing they like more than being able to turn up to an event. You don't have to play 16 matches to get to the money stages. You don't have to play series against players that it's just not worth your time to play, right? They play against other established pros and they get straight to the money. They get well looked after because you can sell an invitational to a sponsor. You can't sell a 256 open tournament to a sponsor as much because while you get more content, you generally get less viewers and people aren't and more meaningless games and people aren't as excited for it. So you don't get as many eyeballs overall over the course of a structure. I know this because this is what I do for a living now, right? But the FGC hate it. And when Monte Cristo made a point about it, saying that there's no reason why you cannot have an invitational structure and basically treat your open tournaments like minors. Nothing's stopping pros.
It's basically the same as tennis, by the way. That's how tennis works. You could go tomorrow and try and qualify for. You'd have to start at the lower ones. You have these things I forget what they're called. I think they're called challenges. Actually, you get through them. That gets you might get you a seed into a smaller tournament like an ATP 250. You win that. That'll get you a chance to qualify. There actually is an open structure. The reason why no one knows there's an open structure in that sport though, Rich, is because obviously no one makes it because logically the top teams are so good. So when you get to a Grand Slam, obviously it's all the seeded teams and a couple of wild cards. And the wild cards, by the way, are usually like what happens here, a really good player who just in his rankings he's just a bit off because he came back from an injury or something,
Yeah, and they always say, you would never heard of players like Sonic Fox in your world. Well, that's absolute garbage because all you do is you take the open tournaments and the people who are winning that, they get wild card placements into the invitationals. Yes. Problem solved. There is no way that's mutually exclusive. And you say this to FGC people and they do not get it. And it's not because they're all stupid, although I'd probably say 90% are, right? It's because they simply believe it is far more important that they have the chance to go to pools and they get to play a top player.
I forgot that, Rich. That's the thing I always forget about the fighting game community because it really is just plain fucking like a fighting game and you just need a controller. I forgot this. Everyone who's in the scene, even the journalists are like people, they play in the tournaments themselves as well, don't they? Like, I got 2 stocked in my third game. Go, what the fuck? You're not even a pro player. No, I was doing well. I'm still like...
they turn up to pools and they're like, oh, brilliant, I get to play against the top player and he smashed me to pieces, but I learned a lot from it. And it's like, let me tell you, the pro might have shook your hand at the end of that, but as he looked into your eyes, all he was thinking was, you were a waste of my motherfucking time. He doesn't respect you, right? He doesn't give a fuck about you being there or you having a learning moment. All the pro wants to do, the established dominant pro, is make money for their craft and their talent. And the FGC is so behind the curve in a period of unprecedented esports growth that those players with personalities and skills who are at the top of their game and in big name organizations, they are not making money. They're still sharing hotel rooms.
Fucking hell.
It's mad. People are sleeping on floors and shit to go to these tournaments. It's fucking like, do you know what I mean? In 2018, when all this money's coming into esports, the FGC, it's like 2006, and the pros are going, bloody hell, yeah, this is great, but they don't mean it. But everyone else is like, hey, look, I got to play the player, so the system works for me. And basically, the amateurs keep the pros hungry and fuck them over. So I've seen it. I've seen what happens when you sort of get enamored with the idea that the only stories that matter, it's not the excellence that matters. It's not the dynasties that matter. It's the underdogs. I wrote an article about Stewie 2K actually talking about this. And I said, there's a reason why movies of underdog stories end at the point where the underdog wins, because it is never happy what happens after. And I use the example of Buster Douglas.
So many in history.
In Tokyo, he knocked out invincible Mike Tyson. Right? Nobody thought it could be done. He went in there. He was like 40-1. It was insane. It was considered the warm-up to the unification bout against Evander Holyfield for Mike Tyson. And Buster Douglas, due to a combination of Tyson's complacency, the fact his corner didn't even bring the equipment to reduce swelling from his eyes because they weren't expecting him to get hit. They thought Buster Douglas would go down. It was a fuck up, and Tyson loses. Now, what happens to Buster Douglas after that? Do you think he holds on to the belt? Nah, loses it immediately, of course, to Evander Holyfield, a fight nobody wanted, a fight he couldn't prepare for. And then after that, he never held the belt again. And at one point, he ballooned up to 400 pounds, lapsed into a diabetic coma, and almost died. And the only thing that saved his fucking life was that his trainers came in and said, yeah, Buster, we'll have a comeback fight, yeah. That, you don't want to see the sequel to the Buster Douglas underdog movie, because underdog movies, that's what they are. It's the feel good. It's a tiny little moment, an aberration, a blip. That is not how you should structure anything. It should be about the norm, the consistency. It's ridiculous. So, look, getting back to the point before we talk about Buster Douglas dying and whatnot, or almost dying. I definitely think we've got some kinks to iron out in the major system. I still think it's the best thing we've got. I've said it many times on this show. I hate it when players say, the major's devalued and majors don't mean as much as other tournaments right now. Put your money where your motherfucking mouth is then, kids, and don't go if you feel that way, right? Make a statement. Of course, they never will, because they want the sticker money, they want the prestige, they want the prize money. So no one's never going to boycott a major, are they? So stop saying they don't mean anything. But honestly, I look, again, it's the classic CSGO mentality. I'm looking over at Dota 2 going, why can't we have that? And any final points before we move on?
I mean, listen, I guess we should probably mention what you just said at the end there. Put it this way, it's still a better system than, many other ones. For many years, League of Legends had a fucking super whack system with a lot of problems with it, I think they fixed a lot of these aspects, though. And that's one of the things I actually did make in my video that was about the major qualification system generally, though, was that one thing I actually like that they implemented in League of Legends, and I kind of combined the two systems, is that you got all these different ways to qualify. So, for example, in League, they actually made it so if you won the big split before the Worlds, you got to go to Worlds. If you came first in circuit points, you also went. And then the third slot went to a team that actually won a qualifier just to go to Worlds, which was all the rest of the teams competing who had the rest of the circuit points. So what was great there was, I remember the first year they implemented it was the year when Team Liquid, the team that famously everyone was like, fourth, was the year they actually managed to come third in a few LCS. But the problem is coming third didn't qualify you anymore. And so to fulfill their history of failure, they came third and then were the favourites in that gauntlet and then bombed the gauntlet. And so what's genius is when they didn't qualify that time, they couldn't even say shit because they'd had 3 ways they'd failed. They hadn't won the split, they hadn't been first in circuit points, and they had failed the qualifiers. So it's at that point, it's fair they didn't make it to the Worlds. But my point I'm addressing here to CSGO is that we just have the qualification system of, did you make it from last time? Yeah, okay, you're in. Or can you get through the minor? Okay. Or come through some mad online qualifier. That's not really comparable. We don't have a system where the clear-cut number 1 in the world's already at the major because he's won. Astralis, there should be no discussion as to whether Astralis should be at the major. And it's not because last time they came, well, they didn't even come top 8, but it's not because last time, well, it's actually, that's the mad thing. In fact, they'll be in the new challenger stage, won't they? Yeah. They'll be, there you go, there's an example of how ridiculous our system is. So, the reason it's maddening is just that there's so many systems in the world. But the problem with that is, even though I'll make the same arguments again and again, the sheer amount of pushback to this day in 2018 I get against even the concept, not Rich as to whether we should implement it, whether it's even possible to have a circuit point system. People to this day are they use the same argument every time, Rich, which goes like this. But who would decide who got the circuit point. And, oh, fucking hell, great.
Yeah.
Well, I guess as usual, we should just like roll a dice or something. Like that's because apparently what I've learned in life is as long as it's just the cruel hand of fate, people are cool with that and think that that's fair. Meanwhile, by the way, life explicitly unfair. Meanwhile, something designed to be explicitly fair, like if you win a lot of tournaments and place top 4, you get more circuit points and therefore get to go to the World Championship. To them is unfair because a human in any way was involved with deciding that. I'll never understand that logic myself. It is alien to me. I feel like I'm the alien that came to the wrong planet when people argue like that.
Look, so let's talk about it left out. We can breeze through this nice and clearly, and we'll get to the people who are going to be at the major. Pretty much, what was left of EnVyUs, Sixer, Kiyashima, Scream, XMS, and Haji, they finished dead last here. Lost a very close best of 1 to Ensa. And then I'm trying to think, it was 3D Max, I think.
It was their fellow countryman. It was the other unknown fucking Frenchies that beat him.
Yeah, which to preface that, of course, I mean, it's always a shit show when nationalities collide because everyone knows everyone's individual game and there's mind games and a different level of trash talk because they know about the LAN you went to that no one knows about when you got drunk and you pissed yourself and you know what I mean? Like, generally, there's a new level of psychological warfare that goes on in those kind of games. But I'll just say, what an absolute fucking embarrassment. What a fucking embarrassment to have a team with this sort of level of accomplished player. Like, I'll certainly give XMS and Haji a pass to a certain degree. I'll say you've never really had any major accomplishments in your life. You know, you're still on that journey, so to speak, and this left out isn't the final destination, obviously. But when you look at like the likes of Kiyashima, Scream, obviously Sixer as well, who's, again, as I've said it before, he just smacks of a player who just doesn't give a fuck, like just zero quality control, zero attention to detail, literally just like the fucking, you know, the guy like who played the Incredible Hulk, you know, just drifting through CS, like just hitchhiking from. He just doesn't give a fuck.
Less lovable though.
Yeah.
I also don't pull for him, so
yeah. But like
I don't hope that Sixer can construct a machine that'll turn him back to what he used to be.
No,
a great man.
No, it's just like I say, every time I watch Sixer play, it's like he's played a few games. Like, you know, he's got roughly 1,000 hours under his belt. But very little else. It's like he's always.
I would have gone with the joke of it looking like a Make-A-Wish Foundation type scenario.
Well, no, you would have done that, you know. But it's not that bad. But it's bad comparatively to the level of pros, especially in the French scene. Well, say what you will about Happy, maybe not a leader of men, but he knew flashes, he knew smokes, he knew timings. Sixer it's just. None of that's gone in.
By the way, that just shows you as well how hard the French scene have rejected Happy. That they didn't just say to Happy and RPK, like, listen, we're not even sponsored by EnVyUs anymore. You're just doing fucking nothing. Why don't we just get the old band back together for one last tournament, play this minor. If we get there, we get all the sticker money ourselves. Let's just fucking do it. They didn't even, that wasn't even an option for these guys because that's how little they give a fuck about playing with Happy at this point in time. So I don't know what's going to go on with that one.
I mean,
looking good.
Yeah, no, it ain't. I mean, I did see a lot of them say they are obviously like, you know, they're not. We know they're not under any contracts. Like, you can have, you know, you can go and get these.
I believe it was even explicit that that this isn't even a real team. That they're gonna leave.
No. Yeah,
split up.
Well, there's absolutely zero chemistry here. There's certainly, like, again, you watch these matches at the minor that they played, and sure. The Ents game was close, had some good moments, some good individual performances. You feel that once they got one defeat under their belt, they were like, oh, well, here we go again. Yeah, it was a 16-14 as well. It's the soul-crushing one. They just go in against 3D Max and probably underestimated them a little bit, and, you know, the rest is history. But, again, just what a fucking embarrassing kind of last chapter in this lineup's history, like to be spiraling all the way down. And then you're like, well, you know, we were critical of EnVyUs, like maybe EnVyUs hasn't given them the support that they need. Maybe there's extraneous stuff going on. You don't see Hastro at CS events anymore. He doesn't give a fuck. He's too busy, you know, trying to get that fucking Overwatch Skrilla, right? But obviously, like, at this point, this is where you prove it was the org. This is where you prove there was something else you don't know about. You're being held back. Nah, you can't even do that. So I mean, it is just a case of get fucked at this point, like.
And remember as well, like, not only was there actually not even that crazy chance to potentially make the major, like, they have some quality in their team, you know, some of the teams at the major, every team in this minor had flaws with it, you know, no one was, like, unbeatable. Like, funnily enough, NRG was supposed to be in the Americas one, even though they didn't make it. You know, no one was like a clear cut. So not only do you have the motivation of wanting to make the major, which already you can get a selfish motivation for that, get you into a better team. But if you're people like Kiyoshima, you're people like Scream, who had a terrible event, by the way, and obviously was necessary to have a chance to win, you're also trying to make people in the French scene who are inevitably going to make another second best French team and get picked up by an org. You want to make them want to pick you up. And when you consider Scream's another person who has been somewhat distanced by the NBKs and Apexes and Shocks and Kenny S of the world, where you don't hear them talking about wanting to play with him. You need to, if he'd have put like that CSGO Asia Championship and then now this, and he'd have just fragged out of control, whether they made it or not, they'd at least have to consider you, wouldn't they? They'd at least have to think, oh, fuck, well, if I'm making a team, okay, you know, I know I've had my differences, or I didn't like his style of play, but it's like I always say, like, it's a threat. It's someone who could just go off in a game. You've got to have some of those players. So he's done himself no favors whatsoever by just getting completely banged out in this one.
Oh, no. And what's bizarre is we'll probably see maybe one or two of these players at the major itself, because obviously the rules have been changed.
That triggered the fuck out of me.
No, I knew it would. So let's talk about this here before we talk about NIP and Optic, right? I didn't see this coming, because I thought to change rules, it absolutely had to come from Valve. I thought for the major, Valve set the rules, and we did a story about this where we talked about the conflict of interest. I went out there and broke the conflict of interest story and did a video about it, and basically said Valve have finally recognized that conflict of interest among CS teams is bad, and they are going to police it. And if you have financial interests, you must declare it before you go to the major, so Valve can see if it's all proper and appropriate and not likely to compromise the integrity of the competition. And I thought that was brilliant. And I was like, it's great. Valve modifying the rules to what we need in the ever-evolving esports space. We've had the Asian minor. We've had the NA minor. You know, we've had the CIS minor. And then it gets announced that actually you can now have competed in the minor and go to a team as a stand-in and compete at the major. For the first time at any major, this has been allowed. Apart from the times when apparently it was missed and it just happened, which I get bombarded with saying, you're corrupt because you didn't say, not my fucking area, mate, is it? I don't lock the rosters in. I'm a desk host. But this is... To announce this, like, and it wasn't there to begin with because no one saw the rule. So has it come from Valve? Has it come from Faceit? What the fuck is going on? And yeah, now they're saying you can play at the minor and still go to the major. And I think if that was the case, you absolutely had to say that way back when. That might have changed a lot of people's approach to how they did things. Might have changed entire rosters. That we've already had competitions that are now completely subverted and could have gone differently because the awareness of this rule, or indeed maybe even the existence of this rule, didn't happen when those minor tournaments took place. And I think that's, hopefully this doesn't get me ostracized by Faceit. I'd like to think I've earned enough fucking goodwill with them, but it's a fucking disgrace. It's a disgrace. There's no other way to put this. And I was talking to Davey when I did the Peakers Advantage podcast, and apparently they fucked up the NA minor as well, where what they did was they changed the rule so it was like, because they copy and pasted the number of qualifying spots.
I remember this.
Yeah, and they had... It
was for the closed qualifier, and they ended up with a mad three-way tie where... Like one team made it, but on the most ridiculous ruling of a round difference, I think, on different maps played or something mad.
Yeah. A three-way tie was literally decided on round difference or across different maps. It was something like, I don't think I've ever seen a tournament settled using that system.
It's probably the worst tiebreaker I've ever seen.
Yeah. So, and what's interesting about this as well, it just shows I'm so glad that this is the only area now where I am involved in CS, this wonderful space where I can say whatever the fuck I want. Because this community are fucking morons, mate. Like, it's ridiculous. Well, where's the outrage about that?
Oh, I can tell you that, Rich.
If ESEA had done this, They'd have been burnt to the fucking ground.
Remember what I said
ground.
a few episodes back? Face it could do anything they want in this scene, mate. They can literally, I mean literally do what ESL has done themselves, as in ESL moves Pro League to YouTube. Oh, fuck ESL, just about the money. This is shit. Where the fuck's Twitch? PogChamp, I need them. ECS goes to YouTube. Love Face It. FPL sick. Everyone's just a fucking hypocrite in this scene. It's like you got to give it to both. Or just shut the fuck up and don't give it to anyone. You can do that. That's another option. It's viable. Like, the idea that, like, they never get any shit for anything. Now, here's the mad thing about that. Part of what's making me frustrated there isn't that they're not getting shit entirely. Because some of the stuff that obviously ESL's getting shit for, and people are going way too far. I don't want anyone getting harassed. But when it's warranted, that's where it really shows up the hypocrisy. Because this is an example of where, if it's just anyone else, they'd get brutalized, mate. If this was Star Ladder, if this was DreamHack, they'd all get torn open. But if you are one of the chosen few, you can magically skate on this.
Yeah, and let me tell you.
E-League, how about that one? Remember, your boy over there, hltv.org, describing E-League, following their own rules on a league where you explicitly made the deal for appearance in the league with the org itself from day one explicit. He described SK's team not being allowed to change orgs in an org-owned fucking league as I think he described it as the worst decision in the history of Counter-Strike or something utterly ludicrous hyperbole like that. Yeah. That's what people are like in the scene. If they pick someone they hate, you're allowed to just go complete. And what's mad is you're allowed to be ungenerous even with it and just lie and just misrepresent it. It's fucking unreal.
Yeah, and I mean, and look, I've seen the comments. It's like, I thought at E-League we were pretty lucky, actually. I think we benefited from being, beloved by the community and probably got away. Yeah, I think we got away with some shit that we fucked up and the community didn't tag us for that. And we were beneficiaries of that. But then again, we did get absolutely wrecked over things that are completely beyond our control. Why is it the full show on Twitch? What do you think this is about? It's a fucking TV show. You know what I mean? We're giving you the games. We're giving you, we even set up a secondary stream where you got two different desk hosts analyzing the games because the law is you can't have a simulcast if you're going out on cable TV. You can't put the same product out for free on an alternative platform. So, we didn't even put it out on our own proprietary player. In completion. So we got wrecked over things that it was stupid to wreck us about, and we got away with stuff that was probably fair game. I mean, that's just how it is. It's like there is no consistency in the outrage. You've got the villains, you've got the fucking heroes, and the heroes can do no wrong. And what annoys me is to basically get the community on board and to endlessly praise you. All you have to do is have a guy who goes on Reddit, right, and goes, oh, hey, guys, notice there's a front page Reddit thread, so now I'm going to pander to this fucking stupid, hypocritical community populated with fucking idiots, and you're going to yum it up. And I can't respect that level of disingenuousness. Do you think these companies legitimately care about what fucking Sniper Wolf 420 Blaze It Yo has got to fucking say on Reddit? No, they fucking don't.
Did Face It come out either in some official capacity or on Reddit and address this rule? Did they say if they were the ones who decided it or what happened with it?
Well, no, it hasn't.
Well, that's convenient, Rich, because remember, what everyone loves about Face It is they're just right there on Reddit and they give you the answers. They're transparent. They're members of the community. What are we waiting for?
No, yeah, but exactly. That's the key, isn't it? Because much like Riot before them, who pioneered this system to absolute genius, where Riot...
By the way, it's a good system. Like, I wouldn't do it. I think the way that it's done is unethical, as you're saying. You only do it to basically distract and like play damage control. But if I was cynical and I was consulting with a company, I'd 100% tell them to do it.
Yeah, but this is what I mean, right? So Riot literally had a team of people whose job was basically to react to front page Reddit posts. And I know this from talking to Riot employees. The good news is we're starting to cycle out some of the lunatics. NDAs are going to be dropping off soon if they haven't already. So you're going to get some mad stories coming out of there. But anyway, what they used to do was fucking basically they'd have a team of people who would just be like, right, what's on the front page today? And then they would run it up the chain of command going, people are complaining about this, and this. And then the managers would go, you can respond to that, and that. right? But don't respond to that one. There's no answer for that one. We'll just have to pretend we missed it, but we'll take it on internally, make a note of it, and maybe we put a system in place. Maybe not. Maybe we just hope it goes away, depending on what it was. And then you would get that, like the rioters whose job it was to fucking respond, going, "Oh, thanks for letting us know about this bug," or "Yes, we did see this player intentionally feeding, and we're going to completely bypass our own systems that are in place to appease you, an angry mob who were watching his stream on Twitch," right? And they would just do shit like this. So the community would go, "Fucking love Riot Me. They're so good. They care about us." Meanwhile, of course, doing all the things that they can in the background to fuck their own player base in the arse, making up excuses like you can never have in-game voice chat. It encourages toxicity. We will in a game all about team communication, which we stress. You can't have voice chat. You're not allowed that, right? And then we'll just do a 180. 6 years too late. They're doing a scheme at the moment, Duncan, where they're putting YouTubers' icons into the game, but the YouTubers don't play League. It's just they've got big followers. And one of the YouTubers from Brazil even went, "I'd never play that shit game, me." And they're putting his icon in the game because they just want people to come and play and get a new spot. They absolutely do not care about the player base beyond what the player base does to them, which is make them relevant and give them money.
Wait a minute, as in, do they give like a share of the profit to the YouTuber?
Yeah, it's like it's an in-game item that you can you
Where the
buy.
fuck's my item?
Never happening, mate.
Where's like the Thorin fucking icon?
A Thorin shield, mate. That'd be good. Yeah, you see, if you'd been like one of the people that they absolutely fucked over at the start, like, for example, Total Biscuit, where he got so many people to sign up to their game, and then they refused to honor the agreement they explicitly had in place, which was you get to design a hero. Instead, they gave him the Total Biscuit of rejuvenation in the game as some sort of peace offering when they absolutely lied to all of the influencers that they used to get popular, as is Riot's MO. Yeah, like you what you needed to do was basically be around then, have an audience then, and just trick people into signing up to this awful game. That would have been perfect. Anyway, that's another podcast probably. But yeah, for me, it's like I don't understand how this can just sort of slide. This is huge. This is absolutely huge. This is like, if it's a Valve rule, why wasn't it in place at previous ones? What's the rationale for that? Yeah. Why have we changed it? If it's Faceit decision, why is it Faceit can alter the rules of a major when no other tournament organizer has been able to do that before? And as I said, I don't give a fuck if Mikey goes on Reddit and fucking says, "Yes, we've seen this thread." I don't care, mate. This is the biggest competition Counter-Strike has. And the rules and the rationale behind the rules have to matter. And I'll also bring this point up because I saw that you retweeted it. And Sam, I'm going to send you a link here if you can bring it up. It's a tweet from my good friend Rugga, who I know from Counter-Strike Source, the Danish coach, formerly of North, just a fucking all-round, sick guy, really nice dude. And he tweeted something out where he literally said, I'll read you the tweet. He said, "Rules were changed despite it being outlined multiple times that a player would be locked after minor registration. So teams had already been told the exact opposite of what the rule then became." And he says, "This is very odd and smells of networking relationship between Faceit and a large organization. This is a rule change."
Holy shit. As in he's implying like they changed the rule because there's an org who wants a player who they need to get in. Oh, there's an org called, I think they call like Virtus Pro or something, who would probably want like a Polish player maybe because they've got like a standing that's not really been worked. Oh, sorry. And that AGO team didn't make no. Sorry, I was just free associating there.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. I don't know who the organization is.
No, but you see what I mean? You can already start to sort of figure out some that would obviously benefit.
It could be them. It could be Cloud9. They would definitely benefit, right? I mean,
listen, Rugger, don't go working out. Don't fucking listen. You'll drop a fucking dumbbell on your head, mate. Just stay in the house, lock all the doors, get some fucking SpaghettiOs or something. Just stay safe, bro, because you have given us some great info, but you have inadvertently dropped the fucking bomb.
Yeah, no, but I mean, this is what I mean. So, like, credit to Casper. I'll say this: like, he straight don't give a fuck. He never has.
That's legit as fuck, yeah.
Yeah, he always speaks his mind. He's always been that type of guy, and it is a huge benefit to the scene. One of the unsung heroes for me. But this is, like I say, that this is concerning now because yes.
Even also if there's the potential, like basically an unethical element involved as well. It's not just like an oversight and they've stupidly changed the rule in a way where they haven't thought about the consequences. It's even worse if they've actively told teams you can't do it, and then afterwards, when, as we're suggesting here, some really big orgs like, no, but I need to have a player, you're like, oh, the rule has changed, and even then, it's done quietly, surreptitiously. Why is that not a public announcement?
Yeah, and this is what I mean, like the handling of this. And again, as I said, I'm sure Face aren't going to be happy about me being critical of them, but I'm past caring. I don't think I'll ever work another CS event, so at this point, who gives a fuck? May as well call everyone out equally, right? Yeah. And stick to that ideal. At the end of the day, the way this rule implementation has been handled is fucking shockingly bad. It's shockingly bad. The community, the fans need to know. Right, the teams definitely needed to know way back, because it literally changes everything for some teams. And also, as you say, the implication that there could have been a collusion aspect to this, or a top organization has got to face it, going, look, mate, if we've got to have, I don't know, let's say 3 players, or we might have to drop out. Well, we all remember what the shit show was like with Immortals. So nobody wants that again. That completely fucking put a dark cloud over the major. So obviously, I'm sympathetic to the tournament organizers changing this rule. But yeah, this had to be fucking communicated, and it hasn't been.
And so also, by the way, in that scenario, if what you're saying is accurate there, like you're not actually saying it's accurate, but if that ends up being what happened, that's exactly the sort of grounds where it should be Valve coming in and saying, wait a minute, that's why you've changed that rule, right? You're not hosting majors anymore, or this team's penalized for like fucking bribing you or whatever they've done in this scenario. Because the most ridiculous element of this to me is that, like, even if you change the rule, okay, put it in a rule book, publicly announce it, whatever. Don't get anything. Even afterwards, anyone, by the way, who imagined that the CSGO dev Twitter account memeing and tweeting a few people in the community meant they were now going to speak to the community and address things. Well, here's a perfect case of where they could have said, that was us who made that rule, and as usual, nothing.
Yeah, well, yeah, we need to know. Here's the thing I'll say. I think I think Valve will come out and have to address this, or rather they will instruct Faceit to address this. You cannot just leave this out there. But it's like I say, we're in a situation right now where going into the major and just Faceit policy in general, they seem to be more concerned about what trends on Reddit and responding to that than what you need to know going into the biggest tournament in Counter-Strike. And I think that's really fucking sad, and you've got to up your game.
This Sam, is also, by the way, with the Player Association, get off your asses.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, maybe the Player Association is actually one of the factors in this rule, because we know players haven't wanted this rule to be in place for a while. Limits opportunity, right? And whatnot. So, yeah, but Sam, I see you've linked something there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Clem Murphy is a Faceit employee. I recognise that name, and he's replied on Reddit saying that the rule has been there since before the minors and was clearly communicated to the team.
So you're just saying he's a liar then? So basically, Rugger is a liar. Love Faceit.
No, but here's the thing. Like, so in the reply to Rugger's tweet, where are the players going? No, actually, Casper, you got it wrong. You got it wrong. Like, actually, it was communicated to us. I've not heard one player bring this up. So maybe it was communicated. Clearly, it's a fucking stretch because no fucker seemed to know about it. So, I mean, if you want to give Faceit the benefit of the doubt, then fine. I'll also say this: having Clem
There's also no pro players replying to his tweet like, "That's not the case. We were told," which is usually what you see.
Yeah, like having Clem Murphy with no verification symbol go deep into a Reddit thread, and that's the official communication. Like, nah, you got to do better than that for a fucking major, please. Like, people need to know, like, why are players saying that it wasn't communicated? It's absurd. It's absurd. So we'll come back to that.
Oh, by the way, though, on this topic, though, one thing I wanted to talk about was the actual spirit of the rule. Now, the reason this rule originally existed, because the best example to give everyone of how it worked is the most famous one where we all really learned about what went on, which was when Kirby was bought from Dignitas to Astralis, and they swapped Cajun B over to, it was Dignitas at the time, not North. Yeah. So they did the swap. But since at the time, Dignitas had won the minor, it was actually the first EU minor, I think, Kirby wasn't allowed to play in Astralis. Meanwhile, since obviously Cajun B hadn't played yet in the major cycle, because he would have been playing with Astralis at the major, which was ESL1 Cologne, he did play for Dignitas there, but Kirby couldn't. And so that's a really great way to describe how the rule worked and what the point of the rule was. The point of the rule was to stop you basically doing something where, imagine Kirby had always been in Astralis, and Astralis had said, well, we don't play in the minor anyway, so you know what, Dignitas, for 10k, we'll just give you Kirby. And then they win the minor with Kirby, and they say, right, give him back now, and he comes back over, and then they play with a stand-in at the major. Obviously, no one would want that type of scenario to happen. No. Likewise, no one would want a scenario where Dignitas had failed the minor, and then Kirby was just taken into another team just because he's not going to play at that one minor. No one wants these scenarios where you're not really playing in the spirit of the game. That's not a real player on your team. You're not really trying to play this lineup. You're just trying to get the best lineup together for this one tournament, the minor or the major. We're trying to stop that happening, and we're trying to stop something like you see in ECS, where because Simple doesn't play in ECS, he just keeps fucking standing in for official games and just dropping 40. And then again, because it's Face It, everyone's cool with that rule and thinks it's totally reasonable that the best player of all time is just fucking smurfing in pro games.
So look, we'll definitely come back to that based on what it says. But as it stands, I've known Casper a long time. He would absolutely have had to have been told, because he's the coach of a team going there. So the idea that he wasn't told, was told and then made that tweet seems a little bit fucking crazy to me. Not the type of player to do that. If it was MSL, I might go, all right then, yeah, okay. Right? Because he whines for fucking fun. But nah, bollocks. Right, so let's wrap up the minor. Optic and NIP are the two teams that came through. Let's focus mainly on NIP. Like, obviously, super happy for Optic. This is the sort of first step, I think, of this team potentially living up to its potential, if you like. But NIP, I wouldn't have said they were even necessarily favourites. You could have seen them losing to an Optic or an ENTS. It's not as if NIP are a bedrock of consistency right now. But they were able to come out. It was pretty solid performances in the last two crunch series against ENTS and Optic. Pretty strong 2-0s. Very good level of performance across the board. There were some people who were saying, maybe Lecro as an in-game leader might not work. But here's the reality. The key difference here for NIP was that for once, in what feels like forever, the two veterans really performed incredibly well and did it in tandem with each other. So it was Get Right and Forest back to playing, at the capacity you would expect from them, and maybe even a little bit more. And the reaction when they won is probably worth talking about. Like they were in tears. I think this is actually a good sign because I think they finally woke up. I think back in the Exist era, I think there was always this bizarre arrogance around NIP that they still believed they were in that 2013 era. Was still.
I can tell you the big problem they had, the worst thing that ever happened to that org was winning those two IEM Aucklands the last couple of years, because they kept doing it where when that win, especially this most recent one where it was really out of nowhere, would give them it's like it confirmed all their delusions that now we are really still one of the best. It's just that it wasn't our day then, or things broke the wrong way, or they're just playing well. But you know what? See the way we won a tournament. Because by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, that is pretty rare. Actually, if you're the team who's ranked fucking 13th, you don't win a massive tournament and beat FaZe Clan in a best of 5. So that's why I always used to actually say the Nip Magic thing towards the latter days in sort of a fucking admirable way. I actually thought it was amazing that they could pull out these wins out of their arse. But they were absolutely pulled out of their arse. They never were that good. And unfortunately, I think that did fuel a weird arrogance to think that actually somehow every other result could be ignored as long as you still get the odd good result.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to, obviously I've known the players a long time, so I'm not saying this in a way to sort of be disparaging about them, but I don't know where that sort of belief was coming from. Like you say, maybe it was winning Oakland, maybe it was something else, but like this looks like a very different team. This looks like a team that know, like, shit, we got to hustle. We've actually got to go out there and beat players, beat teams rather. It's not going to happen. We've got these players. Everybody needs to perform. There's like a new kind of spirit and approach to games. It feels like there was one where they lost a map. Oh no, sorry, they won. I think it was against Red Reserve, and Red Reserve came back after being behind, and it finished 16-14 to NIP. Looked like we were going to go to overtime, and Forrest and Get Right and Dennis, they were all kind of getting into it. Saying, what the fuck were we doing? This is what was going on. And they were just doing it immediately after the game. No celebration for winning. No nothing. Immediately, guys, we're not going to get through the fucking minor. We're never going to get to a major again if we make these kind of mistakes. And I never really saw anything like that back when Exist was sort of in charge. It seemed to be like when they lost the game, it was just like, whatever. They got lucky. Fuck it. And you'd see them and they'd just be out and it was all kind of relaxed. I like that kind of intensity from NIP because they still have very good players. They've got a very good squad. They're certainly capable of upsetting a number of people at the majors. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say they're a dark horse going in, but if there was a tier below dark horse, you've definitely got to put NIP in them. So I'm happy that they got there, but I'm also intrigued as to where this leads to now, because I think the key to improvement is realizing you've got areas to improve in. So, I think that's that. That was the European minor. So we can do some news hits. Maybe if we've got time, we'll get into E-League, or maybe we'll leave it until E-League's over. But there was another bit of news, kind of flew under the radar. ESL have seen their tournament director, BSL, legendary 1.6 player from Norway, who's done many, many things, actually a fully trained journalist and whatnot, and won an award for his journalism, if I remember rightly, in Norway. He's actually stood down from ESL. And he didn't make it a full year in the position before standing down. He put a statement out on Medium, which I also thought was a bit strange that he did it on Medium and not an official ESL channel, almost as if he had something he wanted to say away from sort of what the company had planned. But he said, during the last 11 months, I've spent 138 days on the road. I've supervised 11 pro-level competitions in that period in Germany, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Dallas, Denmark, Malaysia, South Korea, Poland, Australia, and Brazil. And to do all this has meant spending 4.5 months away from my 2 kids, who are aged 3 and 5 years. This works for some, but it doesn't work for me. A friend who has supported my every esport endeavor over 20 years asked me if I am finally done with esports, and my answer was, I think that's not possible. Its fabric is too closely weaved with who I am. It has given me everything, but for right now, I need to step down. So he sort of makes it sound like it's very much his decision, wants to spend more time with the family. I don't know about this. I'm going to be a little bit cynical and say that I feel that is maybe like when politicians stand down to spend more time with the family. It's kind of like no one would ever argue with that statement, right? No one would ever say, want to spend more time with his family. What a cunt. No one's ever going to say that, right? But I don't know if I've heard a lot about moves that are going on in MTG right now.
Well, here's the obvious question, right? That again, maybe you have to be a journalist to think this way, because you have to have a mind that questions the way someone phrases something. Here's the obvious question, Rich, that I think everyone who accepts that premise that he just wants to stand down and spend more time with his family hasn't thought about is, are you under the impression that when he took the job tournament director and knew he would be going to all the tournaments around the world, he didn't know that would involve spending a lot of time away from your family?
Yeah, I mean,
premise not plausible. He's already been a pro player like that.
Oh, yeah.
The problem with that premise is that could be part of it. Like, for example, if he already had a reason to leave or just didn't like the job, then a good reason to say that you're not doing it anymore is not a benefit of not doing the job is getting to see your family more. But that was or implicit within doing the job is that you're not going to see your family much.
Yeah, and it's an interesting kind of change, because the one thing that I thought would have happened based on the chatter that we've heard about, there's a lot of talk right now that MTG, which is obviously the parent company that owns ESL, ESEA, and DreamHack, they're looking to do some sort of internal reshuffling ahead of looking to sell the company, or rather their esports divisions, to a big buyer. There was a lot of talk about Tencent potentially coming in and buying it, a prospect that mortally terrifies me. I think Tencent own way too fucking much, and if they start buying up more and more properties in the esports space, I mean, we've already seen them act as a referee in a lawsuit because they own shares in PUBG, and they also own shares in Fortnite, and PUBG were in a lawsuit with Fortnite, which just sort of mysteriously went away. You kind of have to wonder if the Chinese overlord said, I don't want thing I own 1 suing thing I own 2, kind of seems a bit silly. So, and obviously they've got League of Legends, you know, it has the potential to get scary if they then own a company that owns pretty much 70% of the esports calendar, if you divide it across all their properties. So not too keen on that idea. But apparently there's a lot of internal shuffles, and you'll see MTG guys have quietly ascended into positions of power within ESL, within DreamHack, and this is meant to be ahead of some sort of like cost-cutting merger before they sell, you know, like just to make the company a bit more streamlined rather than separate entities, which they always talked about when they did the buy. This is what I've been told anyway. But they appointed a good, like, if I know Alexander Nair. I know BSL's replacement. He's been at fucking ESL as long as me and you have been in esports.
Mate, he used to be like a tournament admin, or maybe even like actually was doing a similar role to this back when I was going to ESL events as a journalist.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Like, this motherfucker is dyed-in-the-wool esports. It's not like some, how shall we say, you know, kind of
big
token
acquisition,
position.
You know.
Yeah, but they haven't brought somebody in, a big name, to sort of take the flag. This is a guy who actually understands the minutia, the nuts and bolts of tournament direction from every level. And I'll say this, I like BSL, I like Jonas, I've got a lot of respect for him, but I always felt when they brought him in, he was pretty much just a public figure. And like, I think that was reflected in how he dealt with the Dota issue when you know, he was always in the threads when people would complain about Facebook saying, we hear you, and then if you want to go check this out, you can. Whenever there was like an event like ESL 1 Cologne, it would be day one feedback thread made by BSL, and I'm like, why do you need a day one fucking feedback thread from the community? Just run your event. Like, just fuck them. If they don't like something, you'll hear about it. The idea that the community at large has worthwhile feedback is terrifying, because you're meant to be the industry leaders.
The worst part is you feed the delusion of the 15 people who are incredibly deranged on Reddit who think that like everyone's listening to them and actually changing things based on what they say.
Yeah. Like they're in an episode of fucking Big Brother, right? Where it's like we just keep voting and changing things. I fucking hate that. You know, esports isn't a reality TV show, kids, unfortunately, like a lot of things. In the same way, my opinion on global politics doesn't change foreign policy. Your opinion on what we should be doing in esports changes fuck all. And the sooner you get on board with that fucking reality, the better you'll feel, instead of driving yourself half crazy, being on social media, tweeting at people who don't give a fuck whether or not you exist. You'll feel better, trust me. But I always felt like BSL was kind of just like a figurehead. I don't know how much he actually did when it came to the fucking, you know, nuts and bolts. Like, honestly, I'm sure he was there. I'm sure he had to be present at the events. But this is a good swap for me. The difference is he won't be well known by the community. He doesn't have that same allure as one of the greatest 1.6 players who ever touched the game. But he certainly is somebody who knows his shit. And maybe that's an acknowledgement by ESL in a strange way. Like, yeah, we actually do need people who know what the fuck they're doing and not figureheads and people who've got a slick line on PR, you know? But I also do think, I don't think BSL was happy with a lot of what he was doing. He was always the guy. Like, it's different. Like when Carmack would do it. Like I always felt Carmack probably wasn't supposed to post as much or tweet as much. I always felt like he felt very personally invested and would be there. BSL, it always struck me as like begrudging. Arguing with the fucking community again, pretending to take feedback on board again, trying to win Dota back again. You'll never win Dota back, ESL. That community doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Once you are evil in the eyes of the Dota 2 elitists, you're evil forever. Forget about it. You may as well be fucking News Corp, and you may as well appoint Rupert Murdoch as your fucking, instead of Ralph Reichart. But so yeah, I think he probably just wasn't happy with what his role entailed. And maybe he should, maybe he should fucking take that Brexit on esports. I think he's done pretty much everything. I don't know what there is left for him to do, really. So I thought that was interesting. Do keep an eye out, by the way, if you see any other moves like this internally for the 5 people who watch this podcast who care about the business of esports, because I'm pretty sure 2019 is going to kick off with a sale from MTG. I think some big company's going to come in and take over. They were also linked with some Singaporean big tech company as well, whose name temporarily escapes me. They've had extended talks with multiple people, so it looks to be happening at some point. Right. Anyway, other bits of news. What was the other one? There was some roster moves as well. Here we go. Just to fucking preface this going, we were talking about how Esperanto at Imperial fucking owned himself by basically painting. Well,
joke's on us.
Yeah, joke's on us.
He hasn't had to learn any lessons, has he?
But you don't need to learn lessons. It's esports, kids. So for those that have been following this, and I don't know why you would, but just in case you watched the last episode, it just continues. So Esperanto, good up-and-coming player from Lithuania, was benched by the Imperial because he sort of pushed back against Crystal, refused to listen to instruction, refused to respect him as a player, wanted to actively replace him, and basically said to the organization, it's him or me. And the organization said, well, it's not going to be you. We're going to stick with Crystal. And that looked to be like the right thing to do, and he was benched. Well, immediately showing weak management, very strange. They decide to turn that around. Crystal is out of the team. See ya, get fucked. Done absolutely nothing wrong again that I can see beyond coming in and trying to add some structure to a team of basically pug stars. And with that, obviously now we see who the partners in crime were. Tensky's been benched, who's one of the more tenured players in this lineup.
Yeah. Don't worry, folks. There's more coming. Keep going.
Yeah. And then they have brought in, I wonder whose idea this was. They have brought in a player called Poun or Poon. I can't even fucking say his name. Another Lithuanian up-and-comer. And, of course, they've added everyone's favourite steroid-addled mess, Labanjica, to the fucking lineup. Right, yeah. Let's be absolutely clear.
Do you want to know something interesting, though, Rich?
Yeah,
I thought you might find this very, very interesting.
Yeah.
If you go to Labanjica, his Twitter, he only has 666 tweets. Now, first of all, he's obviously keeping it at that number to be like, oh, how edgy I am. No, there's another factor here that I thought was interesting, because when I heard he'd been added as a pro player, Rich, I thought you'd be making this point, actually, is how could any esports org in the current climate add someone who has tweeted out N-bombs on his Twitter, said ludicrous shots? This is someone who plays the role of like, just fuck around. I'm skilled at the game, but I'm just fucking around trolling. It's like, okay, cool. But you do know in the modern climate, you'll never be able to transition into the pro scene if you've done that, though, right? Apparently, again, everyone's just cool with that.
Yeah. I mean, forget the N-bombs for now. Forget the fact that, like, most of his Twitter is him talking like he's fucking Tupac, right? Like, it's insane. Like, the haters are all coming for me, man, but I keep my set close. What are you talking about, mate? What are you talking about? You get up, you probably go and do a fucking very boring job, and then you come home and you play CS to a very mediocre standard. And the only reason anyone knows who the fuck you are is, unfortunately, the overall level of what qualifies you to have a fan base in Counter-Strike is at an all-time low, because the community of they're just kids now. We've cycled out the sort of more intellectual, thoughtful, kind of older players, it seems. They've gone and got married and had kids, and now we've just got 16. He talks like Tupac. Who the fuck's Tupac again? Oh, Lil Peep's dead. Oh no, like, fuck off. Like, what is this? Like, I thought CS would never get that, but it did. So the idea that you've just got some fucking edgy wannabe rap gangster who's actually just like a fucking, just a regular guy from Macedonia or something.
Montenegro, I believe. But yeah.
Montenegro, my bad. Don't get them mixed up. That's a problem, right? I mean, and he's not a good player. He's not a good player by any fucking stretch of the imagination. I don't even understand what the appeal is here. What? Because he's got like 20,000 Twitch followers. This is now a viable strategy for picking up players. He's 28 as well, by the way. Like, you're leaving it a little bit late in the fucking game to fucking have some development. I mean, I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe he was that old. I was like, he's just some kid fresh out of school, because he talks like he's a kid. He's got the emotional intelligence of a kid, the life experience of a kid. And it's like I say, he threatened to fucking kill me. He said if he ever saw me at an event, he would fucking light me up or something ridiculous. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, all right, mate. Yeah, you fucking simmer down. I think he just had a bad day on the juice. I think he just got his cycles mixed up or something. I'm all right with it, though. He blocked me off the back of that. He came into my Twitch chat and was like trying to say, why are you bullying me, man? Like, you did threaten to kill me, mate. Like, I'm just saying, you are a daft cunt, and I'm not intimidated by your fucking swollen, watery arms. Like, you know what I mean? You got the fucking same physical presence as a fucking child snowman, you fucking silly prick. I just don't get this guy. Why is he in a pro team now? Why was he in one of the upcoming teams? Right? Why is this real? I just don't get it, mate. And it just blows my mind. And on top of that, of course, the fact that these are all like FPL pug stars, right, is just brilliant. That fucking here comes the face it parade. They're gonna be on board and fucking saying, look, FPL's done it again. We got a 28-year-old waste man on a team. Like, there's nothing we can't do. Like, beam me up, man. What is happening to Counter-Strike? What is happening? This used to be a fucking real thing, like an esport. What's happening? It's turning into fucking Fortnite. Please get me out.
What is the point of Imperial as a team now? Like, here's the thing. If you'd have asked me explicitly in terms of the player, okay, I personally don't think Crystal's probably the in-game leader that's going to take you where you want to go. I think he is at the level he should be at. I think there's a good reason why everyone in his fucking career just leaves him behind, like saying they're going to get fucking cigarettes for 5 minutes or something, and then just never comes back to it. There's a good reason why. He's clearly not going to be a top-level player, is he? But the message you have just sent is so ludicrous. It's like, oh, our pro-level team that just won DreamHack Summer. Yeah, it's actually just sort of like an FPL mix team that just gets to go to LANs and wear a jersey and get some money. Like, we're not a serious team. We don't have any sort of team culture or any sort of ethical standards as a squad. We just put together some skilled players. If they don't like someone, we just let them kick them out, clutch or kick, and then we go to the next LAN. Like, I don't know what message. Like, I would think if you win DreamHack Summer, you want it as an org level up and, then get invited to the big tournaments, go that way. This doesn't seem like that. These are steps down that path.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I saw, like, Face It Mikey did a tweet, right? Because, of course, he did. And let me find the tweet for you about Loba. It's too much, mate, right? Loba is someone who has a big heart, and I mean, literally because of the steroids, I imagine, and struggled on getting into teams for many reasons. One humble action he made many years ago directly caused the butterfly effect, affecting 4 amazing teams that would end up becoming his teammates one day. Life is cool. Go Loba. So here's the interesting part, right? Loba tweeted out, like, pretty much just after that, off the back of that, he said, I don't know what's happened here. I have just punched someone because I thought he was shouting at my old grandfather. And he just put a tweet out basically saying he'd fucking assaulted somebody over not that he had been shouting at his old grandfather, just a misunderstanding to all intents and purposes, and that he was waiting for the police to turn up. I think he's deleted these tweets now, as would be sensible to do. So again, keep in mind, as somebody that should apparently be banned from the whole of esports for slamming a 7-year-old Swedish boy through a cage at Hell in the Cell 2015 in Stockholm, that was terrible of me to act in self-defense. Haha, but look at the big man covered in tattoos punching total strangers in the streets. Haha, let's give him a salary. Haha, big heart, by the way. This thing's absolute fucking trash. It's trash, mate. It's absolute garbage. Wake me up, right? I'll come back when fucking we apply some logical consistency to public figures. I'll come back then. But nah, it's a fucking joke, innit? And again, regardless of all of that extraneous stuff, forget that. This is a guy who at 28 is still shit. And he's getting a chance on a team that just won a tournament. What an embarrassment. What about all these young players? Like, put it this way. I would say this. Obviously,
if anything, doesn't his system prove that FPL as a breeding grounds for talent doesn't exist? Because they've taken a 28-year-old from Montenegro, who we know literally everything he's been doing for the last 3 years, because he's been playing CS and Face It, streaming the games, working out, and then listening to Tupac. What time's he got left in the day? That's all he's been doing. And he's like the fucking last one left. When you're picking teams in a fucking football match, right? You have to have him then, I guess. But is that what we've got to now? Is there no one left in FPL?
Yeah, it's just unreal. And again, what about all these young players that are coming up? I thought the point of FPL was to develop young talent, right? I was just going to say, if his story just wasn't all utter bullshit, like, you know, I'd be like, go after that kid. He's ready now, right? He's got his own place. He's streaming now. It's all legit. At least try him. He's
right? Like some sort of shit CS, like I'm Poppy. You remember that girl that came along who was doing all those weird videos where it turns out she was like a musician or something. Yeah. And like it was some sort of like cultural experiment. He's like some CS equivalent of that, because after about 3 stories, all of which just, you know, all the facts contradict each other. None of the details are believable. It's like I have a different reaction to other people. Other people go, "Oh, but it's so confusing and fascinating," and I go, "Nah, I'm just not interested anymore, actually, because this just sounds like absolute shit and that has no value to anyone."
Just ridiculous, mate. Like I say, I don't know. There's young players dying to get a chance. And this is the route you go with the Imperial. And it just shows as well, like, this isn't a team anymore that's run in any, like, architectural sense. It's just a clique where basically Esperanto gets whatever he wants. So it may as well be called Team Esperanto, Manager Esperanto, Star Player Esperanto, Coach Esperanto, Esper fucking Ranto. That's all the team is. Absolute nonsense. Anyway. Right. I guess we can start to wind down. How are we doing for time, Sam?
About an hour 25 in.
Oh, that's all right. Then we have got time to talk about some of the other stuff that's been going on, rather than leave it there. I tell you what, since we're like shooting the shit and we're fucking going on about drama, I know people want me to talk about this because people have tweeted at me saying it. But I don't know if you saw this, but obviously we did a show where all I said. Right, and let this be a lesson to never sort of escalate stuff further than it ever has to go. Right, just if you ever become a public figure, there was we did a podcast where I had tweeted out just saying, you know, Rush B, the journalist, not the journalistic organization that bears his name. It hasn't proven himself to be a credible journalist to me. You should probably take a lot of what he says with a liberal pinch of salt and treat it as it is. It's gossip. And the reason for that is I think you have to earn your stripes as a journalist. I've said this many times. You got to have a positive track record. It's definitely not that I'm biased or worried about losing the crown of King Leaker, because I don't even do that anymore. I haven't done that for years. It doesn't bother me. Support DK on the show. Support one of Rush B's associates, Nell, on the show. It's definitely nothing personal, but you have to have a track record of being right. He doesn't have that. You have to have a track record of ethical behavior and an understanding of journalistic ethics and integrity. In my opinion, he didn't have that. You also have to not be running mad types of game behind the scenes of basically exploiting the goodwill of younger people that are a little bit naive, think maybe they're going to get rich off a website or a podcast, and basically use them for free labor on the promise of money down the line. And he's done that, right? And I just made that point publicly. Of course, the community being the way it is in CS, I'm obviously the old man who can't handle a bit of competition, even though we're in no way in any form of direct competition. And, I got like 3 to 4 days of like death threats, abuse on Twitter, usual shit. Not a big deal. Just par for the course whenever you express an opinion in Counter-Strike.
But you didn't just straight retire off of that. Like when you got that, you didn't go, well, I better just retire then. So.
No, because I've had it for fucking 15 years. So I'm more than well versed with what
comes with the territory, some would say. Sadly. Yes. It shouldn't, of course, but just does.
Shouldn't. Now, he put out a twitlonger, which, Sam, you'll be able to get it off his Twitter. It's a little bit more difficult for me because I'm blocked. He put out a twitlonger that basically said, I'm quitting being a journalist now because of Richard Lewis putting out a tweet about me. I received death threats. Now, first of all, unlike me, I generally retweet the threats and the abuse I get or put it out there. And sometimes I do just not and report it to the police, depending on how credible it might be or how sort of nuanced it might be. Because, somebody might say something and it might inadvertently give a detail away about me I don't want, because that could affect further people having a greater capacity to threaten me. But certainly, I did tweet out an email I got where it was like, we've already paid to kill you or something. And I did get a few death threats off the back of the Rush B thing. I can't remember which one I tweeted out. But it was quite clear to me that Ryan didn't send it. And I said that in the tweets. I said, Ryan didn't send this email, but it's probably someone from his Discord, because that's what it's all about, right? Well, anyway, I know my fan base at this point, and I doubt very much the people that follow my work would go out and issue death threats to this guy. He didn't show the threats. I'm skeptical. Let's put it that way. But anyway, he put out this twitlonger. I'm not going to read it all because it's very sort of self-aggrandizing, overly long twitlonger, basically saying, you forced me out. It's Richard Lewis's fault. It's a bit like all you had to do was just take it on the chin. Say, yeah, actually, I have fucked up a little bit. I'm new to the game. I'm learning. I want to get better. And that's it. And then you just continue with your work. I mean, if you quit at the first time you get any criticism from other people in the space, esports is definitely not the industry for you, because criticism is given very freely indeed. And in this, he kind of like twisted it round. He didn't acknowledge some of the criticisms we made. So one of the things he said was that because sort of the diminishing joy he had in doing the work and the abuse he was getting, he could no longer continue in the scene. Well, look, let's be absolutely real here. Did you say anything when writers that you employ were deliberately going out of their way to be abusive towards me, towards Thorin, towards DK, towards other people? Right? No, you absolutely were not calling these people out, and I could name names.
You know what's weird about that as well, Rich?
But it would be the most relevant they would be in their life if I did. What's that?
Since he uses the concept that you tweeting made him get death threats, that people were dogpiling him. He actually used that word. By the way, that's like a word you can go ahead, everyone out there, and flag. When you see that word used, the person talking doesn't know how Twitter works and is now trying to trick you into also not understanding how Twitter works, because they're implying that, like, when they make a comment, if you disagree and don't follow them, you're somehow not allowed to use your Twitter account to read their comment and make a tweet replying to their comment. Basically the main function of Twitter. Yeah. Like, the implication there is that whenever Richard tweets something, everyone reads the secret code, hears the secret dog whistle, does everything Richard wants them to do. If he makes a comment and people come and reply to him, that's bad. But it's cool for him to not ever call out anyone that's associated with him, to allow unethical behavior, because he didn't do it personally. Have you noticed how one person has to take responsibility for something they, by definition, could not take responsibility for and have no responsibility for? He doesn't have to take any responsibility for something which is explicitly his, because even worse than a normal organization, he's put his fucking name on it. Yeah. It's not even like he's just the head of one working for them. It's his company with his name on it.
Like I quickly realized in the aftermath of this, I was like, I'm getting spammed again, you know? And I started looking at some of the comment threads, and, you know, it was the same names.
It's also rich as fuck for anyone who associates with Don Hassey, all of his little crew, to start talking about dogpiling, harassment, sending people to tweets. Like, are you fucking shitting me? And remember, what was the reason Richard also called you out? He was worried that perhaps you were in some way colluding with said people who themselves cannot be a public-facing journalist and therefore legitimizing totally non-credible information and their behavior. So what do you do as you quit? Do the same thing as usual. And what do you do when you don't do it directly on Twitter? You do it on a Discord. Would that be the same Discord where people found all that evidence of racial slurs being used all the time and ridiculously edgy jokes? Oh, again, won't be your fault, though. Nothing's ever your responsibility. At this point in time, just probably blame your mum for having you and say, I didn't choose to be alive. Like, where are we going to go with the level of fucking, like bailing on responsibility here?
So I'll say two things. I'll say, obviously, anyone sending death threats is a piece of shit. Obviously. Never endorse that. If anyone's doing that in my name, fuck off. Nothing to do with me. And I'll also add, I'm pretty sure he won't quit, and I don't think he should. Because obviously you're passionate about it. You give a fuck. You've run some shady ass game, sure. But you can come back from being a fucking...
From Rich, the lesson hasn't really been learned, has it? Like, he doesn't really imply here that he's figured out, like, the downside of it, you know?
No, he's throwing a pity party, which is also why I don't believe he's actually quitting anything at all. I think this is like a momentary ploy to get some sympathy, and that's that. But I would say don't quit, because if you obviously give a fuck about esports, that's half the battle, right? But like I say, there in no way can anyone ever talk about harassment when there are actual writers, named byline writers on that website, who have just spent their time. Ginger autist says this again. Fat bald cunt says this again. DK thinking he know, you know, and they would all do it, and they would all like circle jerk and coordinate abusive tweets, discrediting DK stories which were right, discrediting your work in the analyst space, discrediting me. And it's like, hang on a minute, I realize what you guys have done. You have projected, and you fucking didn't realize you've done it because you don't have the cognitive capacity to recognize when you maybe are doing something and then criticizing somebody else for doing the thing you yourselves are doing. What their little fantasy was, these fucking losers who call themselves fucking Twitter analysts and you know, people taking their first tentative steps into being a columnist and thinking their opinion's valid. I mean, I saw this one guy like putting out YouTube videos, my opinion on the move, and it's like, listen, let me tell you something. I didn't start doing opinion pieces, motherfucker. Yes. I grafted for 4 or 5 years in the scene before I even thought. Like, but now I can put my opinion.
You know how
out.
many people, Rich, don't get that? I've seen a few people do it where they try and do like a Thorin's Thoughts type video. They don't understand. Like, if I'd have started with that, you would have never heard of me now. The reason people cared what Thorin's Thoughts were is because they knew I'd interviewed everyone in the fucking scene, knew loads of the people behind the scenes, could probably say things in an opinion piece that I couldn't say in my actual work. That's why that classic Reddit comment you'll see a million times over. So when Thorin says something, it gets upvoted. But when I said that opinion as a complete nobody with no credibility, I got downvoted. Why is that then? It's like you've explained it for you. By the way, you've made a very good point there, though, Rich, actually, which is I actually saw, funnily enough, someone talking about dogpiling, that they don't like abuse and harassment and this sort of like behavior. I actually saw when I was doing my research, because I've got something coming up regarding that Newsweek piece, which implied that I had defended an anti-LGBT slur, and then the implication was, why was I still working at ESL? Even though, by the way, I said all the comments before I worked for ESL, but okay, why am I still working at ESL? I saw that there wasn't many people in esports retweeted it, but Ryan Rush podcast fella did, and he retweeted that tweet. Now, the implication of that, if you are anyone with integrity and your actual own internal moral standards, is that you agree with the sentiment. And the sentiment is people who make comments like that, whether privately or publicly, should not be allowed to be associated with big companies that themselves do not explicitly want those qualities associated with themselves. If you do that, you retweet that comment, that means that standard now applies to you. So when people who are columnists on your site, constantly, literally mock my disability and say things like Richard's referred to before, you are co-signing that by your own internal logic. That's your ethical standard. Yeah, and you're talking about dogpiling. Get the fuck out of my face.
Well, no, but here's the thing. That they actually do engage in a dogpile. It has been their fantasy for the longest period of time.
Oh, it's so clear, Rich, that they have a little Discord group. They drop a thing and then they all swarm.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can see the same names, saying the same insults, saying the same things. People digging up clips, right? Imagine this for a criticism. An old clip of me, like back on By the Numbers episode 20-something. So, like, over a year ago or whatever.
Probably more, yeah.
Yeah, right. Saying back when Na'vi were failing all the time, that, where should Simple go? And I said I'd like to see him on a brand like Optic or something like that, back when they had that European team, right? Because obviously we wanted Simple to get airlifted out, right? I mean, that was what was wrong at the time. And him going, just a reminder that now that Na'vi are good, Richard Lewis wanted Simple on Optic. Like, you fucking drooling bastard.
What a gotcha that is.
What am I gotcha? And they're all in there replying to it, going, ha ha, and this guy calls himself analyst. Do we not ban him from events yet? Ha ha ha. Like, fuck me. Here's the difference. You guys want to dogpile, but you're fucking nothing. You are nothing. You don't have a following yet because nobody cares about your opinion.
Let's be real, Rich.
You don't do quality work.
In a world in which where these guys were at where they want to be at, this wouldn't be a twit longer. This would be what he'd say on his own podcast, but none of us watch it, so it's not relevant. But why does he know about all the stuff on our podcast? Because everyone has to watch it. It's actually relevant to the community. Yeah. We built credibility up. It's a bank of credit.
Yeah. Now, listen. Maybe that changes. And one day, me and Duncan don't have a platform. Maybe people are, like you say. Maybe we are fucking idiots, and our opinions worthless, and we don't know what we're talking about. And there's not even entertainment value anymore. Maybe 200 episodes into By the Numbers, it's just sad, and we've got nothing left to say, and we're just out of shit, like watching your favorite stand-up comedian try and be edgy 10 years after his fucking heyday because he gets a special on Netflix. Yeah, I get it, right? But for now, you're trying to dogpile people with. Right, you're doing all the things you're accusing us of, which demonstrably we've never done. Actually, I'm not even using your names right now. And
weirdo investigative journalists have no paper trail showing we've ever done anything.
Right, and yet you live in this fantasy. Here's how you get rid of me and Duncan, and I'll tell you, it's not hard, but it is hard. But it's not hard. It's very simple in terms of how you do it. The mechanics of how you do it. Work hard, do good work. Right? Don't be little fucking rats who care more about fucking Discord points and backslapping each other. Go out there, do a serious piece of analysis like Thorin's boy Max does. Go out there and write a serious investigative story that changes the fabric of the industry. Go out and find that. You apparently are juiced in. You've got the leaks. Go and do that, right? Go and write an insightful column after column after column where people go, holy shit, this guy's opinion is fucking righteous. Have flair in your writing style instead of writing it like it's a fucking GCSE English exam and ending it with, and it was all a dream because you ran out of time, right? Do something of fucking substance, and then when people flock to you and they want to see more of your work and hear more of your opinions and want to fucking give you more and more leaks because they know now you're the go-to guy for that, guess what happens then? You've got the platform. Come at me and Duncan then, yeah? It's just sad when you're fucking tweeting to 50 followers about how we're cunts and we don't deserve anything we've got. When you've been in the scene 12 fucking months, you're probably not even out of school yet, right? Do the fucking work. Come at us, do the work, take us down with good work. No one's ever been able to do it yet because no one can stay the course for 5 years.
The trend I've noticed as well with people who've been in this position is I can always tell the warning sign, right? Which is when the person has flamed me on Twitter before they even become a journalist, they never make it. I can already tell you that right now. Like, there's never been the guy who hated me, had some axe to grind, was flaming me, talking shit, bringing stuff up in that when they've just got into the scene, who then continued on, became a brilliant journalist, great member of the community. It's never happened because the sort of person who does the hard work and graft and improvement to become really good isn't looking at other people and being like mad envious and fucking talking shit on them. They're actually focused on themselves, improving, figuring out their own shit, what their own flaws are, grinding, hustling in the industry to network. When you talk shit on people, by the way, that is networking, but it's anti-networking. You are creating a network of people who actively will not have anything to do with you. And not because you're like super important to them and they think about you. No, it's the opposite. They think, I'll never think about that person again. What's that person? Nah, I'm not interested. That's what you've done. You've just closed doors for yourself. Like literally, even if you hate these people, just shut the fuck up. You might actually have a chance. Like there's so many people where I would have retweeted their article or I would have said, hey, I referenced it or something. But if they're just going to be a cunt, I'm not going to go out my way to help someone, am I? I'm not going to actively fuck them over either, but I'm not going to go out my way to help them, am I?
Yeah. It's just ludicrous. And here's the thing. I almost thought, actually, there's one guy who I think has potential. And the only reason I blocked him is because he thinks this whole idea of, I'm baiting Thorin. I'm baiting Thorin. I'm baiting Thorin. Look, he's blocked me, guys. He's blocked me. I've been tweeting at him for fucking months. Absolute inane gibberish. And now he's blocked me. How dare he block me? I can't take it. Look at him blocking me. Like, if you're like that, you have a psychological disorder by the fucking way. There is something wrong with you, because apply that logic to conversation, right? Like, just apply that logic to conversation and think about what it says about you as a person. But I did see him start to write some columns, right? And I thought, listen, I'll tell you this. The column work, it's really hard to write something intelligent and insightful, but condensed so it's not bloated and overly long. People still say my writing's bloated, but sometimes it's too short, so you don't even get into it. And, it's an art form, structuring a very good article. And, I don't claim to always get it right, but I think as an accomplished features writer, both in esports and outside of esports, I could probably give you a pointer or two. And I started typing up an email of feedback from his last article. And then I just saw him tweet something again, just utterly pathetic. And I thought, you know what? Not even worth doing it as sort of just a general courtesy. These people are not worth my time. They will not be here in 2 years. They'll contribute nothing to esports. It's just a little fucking treehouse. It's just a treehouse for kids. And it's not even worth considering. So look, back to the Rush B thing. I'll say it. That I'm sorry Ryan got threats. Again, I am 100% confident it was nobody who supports me who did it. It was probably the same person who sent me the threat that sent you the threat. Just enjoying the drama, because that's all these people have. It's probably someone sent you the threats and the threats to your family, assuming they exist. But I'll also say this, like, if you're quitting now over that, you were never going to stay the course in esports, mate. I've had people turn up at events threatening to fucking kill me. I've had people spit in my face at esports events. I'd probably have more fucking death threats than you've had at dinners, right? I have a security detail with an ex-CIA agent at the fucking major because somebody was driving to the event to fucking shoot me, right? I have had people tell me they're trying to look to see if I pay my taxes and maybe get me deported. That just happened 2 months ago. If you cannot live with that, you cannot work in esports, unfortunately, because that is what the community will do to anybody putting themselves out there and doing work. And anybody who says I'm thin-skinned because I block people on Twitter when I've dealt with all of that and worse, you don't know what fucking thin-skinned is.
No, by the way,
heading to the hills at the first sign of bullshit.
On that note, I would say that's what's hilarious, is that whenever people say something like, look at him, he just snaps at everyone. It's like, well, no, look how many followers the person has. Look how much engagement their tweets get. Look how many people talk about them. And look how rarely they respond. Look how rare it is that they make a big deal out. That's actually that's the straw that broke the camel's back that you're seeing. They're actually incredibly restrained. It's not the case at all. There's two things I want to say about the Rush B thing, though. One, again, if you notice the way my mind works whenever I'm processing a scenario, is I always get suspicious when patterns change, but for no particular reason. So this is someone where when the original statement was made by Richard only in a tweet, magically, boom, they're a Redditor. They were there on Reddit. They made a comment. They feigned ignorance of the entire scenario, didn't understand why Richard would be saying this. They respect him. There they were on Reddit. But then afterwards, when all the screenshots came out, couldn't be seen anywhere. He couldn't find it for love nor money, never commenting on it, in fact. Now it's only when he's quit, he's coming out and doing this again, not on Reddit in the threads when people are saying, well, what's going on with this? Oh, and did that. Again, not on Reddit addressing it. Magically just doesn't do that anymore. Like, this is so suspicious when you behave that particular kind of way. And then secondly, consistently throughout this guy's responses to the community, he has shown an utter lack of self-awareness. Like, first of all, here would be a really clever way to win people over on the way out the door, is as you explain how you've realized how terrible it is to be dogpiled and have people sent to harass you and get death threats, you could maybe pop in a little bit like that's opened your eyes as to what happened when you made comments to people when you were a fan, or when you said things that maybe made people who follow you notice a tweet and then they commented what you might call, I believe, dogpiling. Maybe you could make a thing about how you now understand that that's not acceptable for anyone, and you also wouldn't like anyone to go and dogpile or harass people, because actually, by the same internal logic that you have set up Richard as someone doing this to you, your very twit longer should mean that your fans are now going and doing it to him, if that is indeed the way that the structure of the system works. I don't contend it is. Remember, hold me to my standards and I'll hold you to yours. If you make ridiculous standards, you will be held to ridiculous standards. You can't then complain. And then, yeah, as you say, the idea that, like, this is what you quit over. Well, guess what? You were not made for this fucking business, my son. There's a lot. If you think that that's even anything, when you're at like 3K Twitter followers, and if anything, it's actually probably helped blow up your profile a little bit. If you'd have handled the PR side, you could have actually like navigated this in a helping make you a more known figure. And then when you had more breaks, could have helped you out in your career. So the idea you quit over this, it's like, well, you know what? No one's going to shed a tear. Everyone's just going to go, oh, that guy was here for a little while, whatever. I'm on to the next thing anyway. So that's it. There's no big fanfare. If anything, we spent too much time talking about this anyway, but whatever. We have to talk about these things. It is a community podcast.
Yeah, indeed it is. But look, we'll wrap that topic up now. I'll say this. I think Ryan will be back. I think Ryan should come back. Fucking just there's a key thing that in life, it's called learning from your fucking mistakes. And we all do it. You're never too old to do that. And if you do that, you'll always improve as a person. You'll always improve in the field you're passionate about. You know, I've made mistakes, made plenty of them. Burnt some mad bridges, fucked up, let my temper get the better of me, been embroiled in some fucking scandals. You know why? I'm a fully three-dimensional human being. And if anything, I don't like to play the game where it's like who I am in real life is totally separate from who I am in my professional life. I don't want that. I don't consider that a win to be completely duplicitous and two-faced like that. I want to be who I am, and who I am professionally is who I am. And it's just what you see is what you get. A lot of people consider it the other way around. But I'll say, if you can fucking learn something from this and come back, because Don Hassey was really upset that you left. Me and him had a bit of an argument. It's all squared now. You know, people are upset. The people who work with you vouch for you and say you're a good guy. There were people at Double Tap Esports basically going to bat for you over me, who's done a lot to help that publication out, even to the point where they publicly insinuated I might be a Nazi. So that's another reason.
What Double Tap did?
Yeah,
you can't just drop that and then come on, man. It's a community podcast, the realest podcasting. What the fuck happened here?
So they had a journalist who I won't name because I don't.
Was it anyone famous? Like I've ever seen him on camera or whatever?
One of their staff writers, and basically he said, I didn't like what you said about Rush B. You know, usual stuff. Obviously, he deleted the tweets now because the editorial team talked to him about it. Okay. But I said, like, listen. I provided evidence of my points, like, you know, I don't know why you're sucking up to him, you rat. And then immediately, right, because think about the word rat and its literary implications.
I can already tell where he's going to go. What, like the Jews who were exterminated? Like, yeah, well, no, I didn't say anything about Jews, did I?
Exactly what he did. Exactly what he did. He said, I'm Jewish, and that word's been weaponized against my people. Why are you saying it like a Nazi would? And I'm just like, you know exactly what you're doing here. You know exactly the
as all you knew what his fucking ethnicity was.
Yeah, you know the outrageous allegations and slanders that have been thrown at me down the years. I'm obviously not that way inclined. I'm obviously very much not a Nazi or a racist or a fascist. And you're publicly saying this in a bid to try and make this blow up and get me into trouble with that particular group who would seize upon anything. So I just said to Double Tap, I said, listen, guys, you know, like I'm all for giving I'm all for give as good as you get, but that's outrageous. I can't work with your publication in good conscience anymore because you are standing by this. You know, he's got and they did. They said he's just an intern and he's going to complete his internship with us. And I'm like, look, I don't want him to get fired,
That's weird, because according to Rush B's internal standards, when he retweeted that article, he should absolutely be fired, or double tap now thinks you're a Nazi.
Yeah. So listen, I basically, I basically just said, like, I know what it's like when you're an editor, because I've been an editor. There's no thing that leaves you feeling good. Do you fire a hardworking kid to appease someone else in the community? Well, no, I'd never endorse that. And it would be a tragedy that his internship, ended under that cloud. But equally as well, am I ever going to talk to that publication again? Well, no. And it's just one of those
outrageous
things. Yeah. The relationship is soured, but again, I'll say it, the community, my beef with them is not like they do bad work suddenly. They don't. They do great work. Should the kid be harassed and harangued? No, absolutely not. He said something that was very silly. I think it was an attempt to put me in a very public checkmate. And I'm sure he thought very cleverly about what he was doing. But yeah, it's just like, unfortunately, like, I got too much self-respect to ever want to talk to a publication that throws the N-word around in that manner. And the
other N-word.
Yeah, the other N-word. I consider it as bad. If you're going to call somebody a Nazi or publicly imply they're a Nazi, you better have something very strong to back it up. And I don't think using the word rat, which as Sam will attest to, is something that you call people in Port Talbot all the time, for almost 50 different types of behavior. I don't think that's strong enough. At all. So it's a disappointing end to what was a good relationship. And again, that all came out of the back of the Rush B thing. So he's obviously well liked enough for that sort of thing to occur.
I'd imagine that guy's just probably on his Discord, if I had to guess.
Yeah, probably. But there you go. We live in a world. This is another reason why, as I said, the CS community holds nothing of any interest to me. We live in a world where, in my wish to protect the community from journalists that I do not think are doing their utmost to hold the journalistic standards and ethics up for the benefit of the community, by simply putting out one tweet, it sets off this chain reaction of events where I end up getting called a Nazi and getting threatened for 3 days. So 100% done. Like, you just cannot justify this. It's not how people should live.
By the way, though, I do think, as a final to close that whole topic, that in doing so, as you say, the chain reaction from that tweet, I actually think yielded a very positive consequence, which is, first of all, in all the interactions with the Rush B guy, particularly telling in all of his responses, he showed that he doesn't understand journalistic ethics whatsoever. Like, to this day, he continues in his account of things to fail to give facts. He omits facts that he thinks make him look bad, like about that article that was then used on Real Sport, where his version of it doesn't contain actual facts that later were shown not to be the case. He paints things in a certain way, again, not journalistically ethically sound, and absolutely does associate with people who are, by definition, not credible as journalists. And yet at the end of it all, still comes out like, what's this thing about journalistic ethics? It's all fine. And I am a credit, like, you didn't get it, mate. And so, even though I'm not sure that's what Richard actually was trying to do, he was just making a very good throwaway comment. It actually did end up yielding the desired result. It proved that this was the case.
Yeah, but like I say,
and I also think anyone, by the way, who's trying to actively hurt the career of someone like DK is, as far as I'm concerned, like a menace to the community. And so, good riddance to anyone like that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Right. Questions from the patrons of the show. I believe we've got one. Let me just get it, because this new Skype is fucking terrible. It's Detlef Insomniac, one of our $100 patrons. Again, remember, if you give us $100 or more, we will let your questions become part of the show. Sounds terrible when you phrase it like that. Obviously, you support the show and continue the existence of the podcast as well. Many, many benefits. We should probably give you more benefits. I'm not sure now that I've got my home studio built up, me and Sam can brainstorm some ideas. We'll come at that. I like what you do, Duncan, where you actually get the patrons to come and do a podcast with you. That's pretty good.
It's not bad, yeah.
Yeah, also noticed, of course, Reddit mods removed that from Reddit, deeming it not to be relevant content.
Even though, like, a solid 70% is literally me discussing CS.
Yeah. Weird, right? Anyway, Why do you think none of the pro cheating channels ever review SMN demos? He's the player that caused investigation into the cheat that got Kelly and SF banned. He's the only one we know who cheated at LAN. Why not compare Kelly and SF demos to his demos and see if they had any wobble assists or zigzags? Everyone's all over flusher clips, but no one looks into the player that was convicted and admitted it. Sorry if this question isn't well structured. We just want your thoughts on the topic. It's been bothering me for a while. Well, I'll say this right off the bat. I think that is a very good point, isn't it? It's almost as if, I mean, first of all, there are some logistical problems with it, that the demos are old. There's, like, for example, there's issues with Inferno demos now because the map's changed. Like so you need sort of like an external player to even play it, and then that invites itself into the whole, well, how accurate can that be? So you are locked into this problem of, which I think is something that when you talk about cheats, you have to be very cognizant of, and that is that demo playback isn't that accurate. It's an algorithmic interpretation of what happened in the game, and it is relatively accurate, but certainly not pinpoint accuracy.
Yes.
We've all seen the older demos where players are skating around and stuff because it doesn't animate, the full movement to save space. So there are some issues with even demo review when it comes to spotting cheats, unfortunately, especially true in the CSGO era. But I will say this, the idea that we have pretty much convicted Kaylee, and I believe Kaylee cheated and Kaylee cheated at LAN. I know you might be a little bit torn on that subject. I think the one where it was the Mystic Clan win, I think to me it's very obvious that he cheated at that LAN just based on this.
What you're saying there, Rich, is actually a question that I have often wondered about, which is when Kaylee was VAC banned and literally told he can't play in the Pro Kit, why to this day is there not a highlight of the most suspicious clips and throughout his LAN career? There's the one video from that fucking Games Assembly or whatever it was, some LAN. I can't remember which one it was, that everyone remembers where he has 97% headshot ratio or whatever. But no one goes and gets the LDLC clips and then the Titan clips and looks at some of the amazing shots he did because he was a seemingly very sick player, and looks for how suspicious they are, slow-mos them, x-rays them, tries to show what a cheating clip looks like. Why? No one ever did that. That's why I actually think that it's not even about whether you cheat or not. It's about if people can build a witch hunt. Okay, here's a mad statement for you, but I think it's actually true. You actually need an unfounded witch hunt to have any chance of actually convicting someone of actually being a cheater, because nothing else will motivate any of these cunts to actually open up a million demos, watch them all, and try and cross-reference it all and make a great video. Like, fair play to the concept guy. At least he actually seems to put in some effort to his videos. He doesn't just play a clip once or whatever. Like, whether you agree with him or not, it's irrelevant.
The content is utter nonsense.
But people thinking that just taking a 1 minute Twitch clip and putting it on a dog shit subreddit and going, it's locked on a wall. Like, you're not investigating anything there. That's like the guy who goes, that's like me when I just watch my fucking conspiracy YouTube videos, like, yes, imagine if that was real. Like, I don't then go to people, no, I was doing research all last night. No, obviously I wasn't, you idiot. I was literally just sat back watching videos on that. Half that shit just went out my mind straight afterwards, except about the earth being flat and all that.
I'm glad you went with that one and not fucking 9/11. Thanks for that. So, but like I'll say it, the problem you've got just is, I think, first of all, getting all of that evidence is increasingly difficult the more and more time goes by. You've also got this issue with demo replay. And then you've also got, some of the LAN events, I think, they didn't record all the demos from all of the games. I think there's some like that have kind of gone missing, weren't recorded like in group stages and stuff like this. So I think it's very hard, but certainly if I was wanting to build a case, like say I was one of the people who believed that there was a significant percentage of pros cheating, I would want to start with the patient zero, if you like. And to do that, you have to go back to this moment in time, which was called the vacuuming, which is when everybody, there was a few pros who panicked and thought maybe they were going to get vaxxed. And what does that tell you? Right? What does that tell you when people are transferring skins to other accounts? What does that tell you? That says to me that they were expecting a chain reaction. So here's what I would do if I wanted to construct a definitive documentary, if you will. Yes, I would start with SMN and I would look at SF and I would look at Kaylee, because the idea that Cayley is convicted as cheating at LAN solely on that jumping USP shot, which has been emulated many times, even now. It just happened. I think Smooya just did one at ESL 1 Cologne. In the exact same position, in the exact same circumstances. So the idea that is like, oh, well, he was definitely cheating. Yes, the fact that he subsequently got back banned makes it suspicious, but you have to look at holistically everything he did, So I would do that. And then I would look at the players that transferred their skins, and I would go back to demos at around that time, and I would look and I would try and identify patterns and things that have changed. But the fundamental truth of it is, even if you did all that, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. We without
circumstantial evidence.
Yeah. Without the VAC ban, you cannot say adamantly one way or the other.
I actually had this discussion. I won't say the pro player because it's a private conversation, but I actually had a discussion once where a pro player started arguing with me that no pros could cheat, and for using all the old arguments, right? And then I said to him, do you think Cayley cheated? And he said, yes, he has a VAC ban. And I said, so basically, all you need is a VAC ban and he cheated. So even though in his career, you never said he cheated, even though you saw clips that were mad, you never thought he cheated. As soon as he got VAC banned, that's how you now know. I said, you do know that's like a kind of circular logic. Because I even said to him, by that logic, you could go into a game now, a guy could just be spin botting and speed hacking his way through the spawn, knifing everyone, and you would logically have to say, can't be cheating, hasn't been banned by VAC.
Yeah.
It's just garbage, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is what I mean. It's like, look, I understand both sides of the argument. We're in an incredibly difficult evidentiary standard. We are told the only thing that matters is a VAC ban when it comes to competing at tournaments, that even if you've been banned by ESL Wire, you will not be banned from majors, you will not be banned from non-ESL tournaments, you will have to, you will be banned from ESL, and even then, not indefinitely. You will be banned for a period, I believe it is, of 2 years before you're allowed back in, and then it's a permanent ban if you get caught again. So, you're right. The eye test, when it's a speed hack, we go, oh, well, it's a speed hack. Well, some of the shit Cayley was doing with his crosshair is ridiculous. So the eye test told me he cheated at that LAN event. He denies it still, because obviously if you're a pro player and you admit you cheated at LAN, that's a new level of taboo. That's like, fucking saying I cheated. People will go, we've all had a toggle. All right, you shouldn't do it. It's bad. I cheated at LAN. I cheated at the safe haven where no cheat should be possible. That's a new thing. And I used a cheat specifically designed to deceive everybody so I could do it. That's a whole new level of cheating. So no pro player, even the pro players who admit they cheated, will not admit they cheated at LAN usually, right? Like it's just too much. But yes, I think the evidentiary standard we've got is too difficult. It's like it's like riding the difference between a civil court and a criminal court. Criminal court is, it must be beyond a reasonable doubt. But actually in civil court, you just have what they call preponderance of evidence. And preponderance of evidence basically means if it's more likely it's true than it isn't, we'll convict. But that will absolutely not stand up when you have to send someone to jail or potentially the death chamber. And we're just in this weird halfway house. I think, honestly, that time period, there were definitely pros cheating in the scene. Absolutely 100%. And there were pros cheating in the scene who aren't cheating now, who are getting to compete, and they dodged that bullet. But we'll never be able to prove it, even if we went back and looked at those demos. And just to answer the final point of Detlef's question, I think if you went back and watched those demos, you wouldn't find what the concept's talking about. I think, and whether that's because cheats have got more sophisticated and the concept's right, or whether it's because the type of cheat that was being used and probably still is being used in Tier 2 and Tier 3 CS, it just never operated the way he claims. And actually, what he's seeing are demo issues and issues with how the game is spectated. But whatever. Right, there we go. That was the question. All that remains to be done is to read the titles of all the other people who make the show possible, all of our patrons. So our $100 patrons, Bot Vic, Chris Enwin, Detlef Insomniac, TTM XMP, Hyolu, Ruxon, and Jerky's Minion. And of course, our $50 patrons, the Archangel Varao, Sardsawar, Daniel Plamanov-Yordanov, Pete Bidstrup, TC Owens, Vexy, Nostradamus, Marcus Kyunpar, Madsen, Ollie Ginter-Zillan, Colin Penny, Mama Jamma Hennessy, Benakagi Assassin, and William Southern. We'll be back next week with another episode of By the Numbers, where no doubt we'll be talking about E-League, among other things. And until then, take care of yourself.